it is the moment. I think people in the moment of COVID are being more introspective when they see that institutional racism, that institutional violence, and that doesn't mean that all law enforcement are bad. It means there's a few, there's a handful, but it's allowed, and it happens, and everyone knows it's there, and it has to be dealt with, because we're not going to be better until we solve these problems. We have to understand what other people's problems are, and we have to help work to fix them.
Education is a big issue all across the country. What do you plan to do in the realm of education for our district in Indian River County and some of Martin County?
Well, right now, my team and I are looking at education. We're looking specifically at funding. Teachers are not paid terribly well here. We're getting information on the outcomes, performance of our schools, K through 12, compared to the rest of the country. And it looks like Indian River does not fare too well in that posting. So is it teacher salaries? What is the problem? You know, we have to discover what it is, and we have to education. We have to have people who are learning, moving forward, improving society. I can tell you one thing for certainly is that charter schools seem to draw money from the public system and put it into privately funded schools. It's basically a Republican concept, vouchers. The money goes with the student. If you're going to have charter schools should be part of the public school system that maybe children get into through lottery, but not siphoning dollars out of the public system. It just doesn't work. There isn't enough money to go around in the first place, not to be funding private schools with public dollars. And the outcomes of those schools aren't much better than some of the better performing public schools. Something needs to be investigated.
You seem to be quite concerned also about the pandemic that's sweeping the country. And in Indian River County, we've been relatively safe from the vast majority of the instances of COVID and deaths. But there is another wave coming. And how do you think that that's going to play in your election? And how do you see it in terms of Indian River County?
Well, the in-person voter turnout on November 3rd will probably be down considerably, as it was down during the primary, during the first wave. But let's be honest with each other. The first wave, we never achieved any of the goals of the first wave. We are all in the first wave now, and while there was a slight dip, it's escalating sharply throughout the South in Florida. So, if we're talking about a resurgence wave 2 in the fall, we may just blend this one wave into the next, and until there's a vaccine, this virus is going to be infecting people and killing people. So this whole mask wearing thing is about safety and having respect for each other, and it has nothing to do with individual rights. But if you do want to measure individual rights, it is the right of the majority that should rule. And I think the majority are sane and reasonable about this and not trying to turn the virus and mask wearing and opening into a political issue. Businesses aren't going to survive if people are afraid to go there. So we have to be reasonable, we have to listen to the scientists, and we have to move forward cautiously.
So science is a big aspect of your viewpoint. And could you elaborate a little bit on how you see the science of facts and the way that false news is being perpetuated in this country and even in this county, and how will you deal with those aspects?
Well, I mean, science is based in fact, and fact is based in study and knowledge and objective learning, and that's how you make decisions. I mean, people can be entitled to their opinions, but they can't be entitled to their own set of facts. There is only one set of facts that are true. So there's opinions and there are facts. I think we should be guided by science, by facts, by knowledge, by learning. We should use logic and reason and not emotions when we make decisions about people's lives and how we interact with each other.
Aaron Grell is a big proponent of weapons, and NRA endorses her. And you are a U.S. Navy Vietnam veteran. What is your stance on guns?
My stance on guns is I don't have one, I don't want one, I don't need one, but that doesn't mean that people who believe in the Second Amendment and want to have guns for personal safety in their homes shouldn't be allowed to have them, but those guns should be safely stored and locked. They should be safely stored and locked when they're transported to gun ranges or for sporting venues. But I am not an advocate of military-style weapons on the street. I'm not an advocate of high-capacity magazines. I'm not an advocate of gun show loopholes that allow dangerous people to get a hold of guns. I am in favor of protecting the Second Amendment rights of individuals, but again, let's take concealed carry for a moment. Concealed carry will go by the way of secondhand smoke and cigarette smoking. When secondhand smoke was starting to affect people, then the truth of smoking and how harmful it was. So compare that to concealed carry. If you knew somebody was carrying a gun and you were in a restaurant or a bar or in public space where there were a group of people, would you go near them? I wouldn't. They're a potential danger. They have a deadly weapon on their possession. So I'm being deprived of that choice of staying away from that person if I don't know they have that weapon. They shouldn't have it. I'm against concealed carry.
And another big issue that is going to come up in your candidacy is the fact that a lot of people think that because of Black Lives Matter and the movement, that and any actions that precipitated the movement were undue force by police departments. There is a call for defunding police departments. Would you use that phrase, or would you categorize it as something different?
Well, I think defunding police is a bad phrase to use, just like I think gun control is a bad phrase to use. I would speak about gun safety. Gun control makes people think that someone's going to take their guns away. But to have safe guns, that's all people want. They want guns to be safe. So to defund the police, I would say that what people are talking about, as I've learned more about, is they're talking about huge police budgets, and police are doing too much in the community that's related to just social issues that can be handled by other departments, social services, etc. They're being called out on cases where you really don't need an armed policeman to respond to a situation. You could have a social worker, or you could have some intervention, drug intervention group who could go out and deal with a situation. So the chance of escalation doesn't involve a firearm, because a lot of police may be trained how to use that firearm. They may not be trained in how to deal with people in these stressful situations. So spread the money around to different agencies. So that's what they mean when they say defund. So have these other agencies funded so that they can pick up some of the slack. As a matter of fact, I've seen interviews with police chiefs where they say, we really don't want to be doing all of these things. We don't want that to be our job.
Abortion is a big issue, and that's going to crop up in your campaign. If someone walks up to you and asks you what your position on abortion is, what would you say?
Well, I'd say before you can even talk about abortion, you have to talk about women's rights, because, you know, abortion would deprive a woman of her right to make a choice about her body. And an irony along that, and when we saw all of this thing of COVID about people saying that their freedoms were being impinged upon because they were in lockdown orders and they had to wear masks. I saw a picture of a young woman holding a sign, wearing a Trump hat, saying, "You can't regulate my body." It was kind of ironic when you compare it to the women's rights issue. So I think before you can talk about abortion, you need to talk about women's rights. And once you've completely examined that, then we could talk about abortion.
And of course, being a Democrat, you're obviously going to be a supporter of clean air and clean water and what is your stance on climate change?
Well, climate change is real. It's an existential threat to all of us. It is science. We've already talked about that. We don't hear too much from the right now saying that it's all made up and it's hocus pocus. It's a real thing, and we need to deal with it. We are not dealing with it at all. We just had 3.5 years of rolling back EPA regulation after EPA regulation, rolling back regulations on clean water and clean air. I mean, so that it's good for business. Well, businesses, I don't think really want that. But if they can make money off of it, and some are for it, some aren't, but it's not good for people. You can't have policies that aren't good for everyone. It's just like the virus. A bad environment will make everyone sick. It's not much different.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for your time. Good luck in your campaign, and I'm sure we will be hearing from you again.
All right, thank you.